Welcome back to Scouting for Growth, the show where we pull back the curtain on how enterprise operation, and in particular in finance and insurance operations, are being reinvented, not tomorrow, but right now. I'm Sabine VdL, and today I have with me an interesting serial entrepreneur who is literally writing the future of something very simple, the future of claims correspondence. Yo Kwon, the CEO of Voltaire. We are both preparing for Reuters Connected Claims, a conference I co-chair and moderate often, and I thought it would be timely to introduce you to Yo, who will be joining me there this year with his team. Think of your adjusters on one late Friday afternoon. The pressure to get letters out just in time with policy language and legal citations accuracy, and think of the cost of getting it wrong. Litigation, escalation, hours lost in quality audits. Here are some hard numbers that show why this matters. Insurers using artificial intelligence in their claims functions are seeing cost reductions up to 20% and speed ups in claims processing of as much as 50%. This is a stat from BCG. In one case, deploying tens of AI models, I believe around 80 within claims functions, at a well-known insurer, Aviva, this cut liability assessment time for complex cases by 23 days, while improving routing accuracy by 30% and reducing customer complaints by 65%. This is a stat from McKinsey and Company. Another example is in the health sector. A healthcare provider using AI-powered error detection reduced their claim submission errors by 25%, sped up approvals by 30%, and reduced operational cost significantly. So, if you are a David Chan, let's say, a VP of Claims Operations, at any enterprise insurance company is actually juggling adjusters, legal risk regulators, and retention. This is exactly the moment to ask, what if those letters could be accurate every time, consistent, high quality, but also fast? What if your team could eliminate repetitive work, reduce litigation risk, and scale without burning out? Yo, thank you so much for being here with me today. Let's dig in and learn how Voltaire is tackling that very dilemma. Hi, Yo. So grateful to have you on the Scouting for Growth podcast today. Welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, great pleasure to have you. And my first question has to be, Yo, who are you and what got you into insurance?
I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've built mostly deep technology type of companies, cybersecurity, blockchain, and I guess more cybersecurity. And so what got me into the insurance space is I was working with my co-founder on AI technology, and we were trying to figure out different use cases that would be applicable and good for a wide berth of businesses. And while we were kind of testing different ideas, there was someone that was trying to use one of the products that we had built to write claims letters. And we were like, what is this user doing? Like, why are they using our tool this way? So we ended up interviewing them, and they explained to us like what claims letters are and what their job is. And we found it pretty interesting. So he introduced us to his boss. We talked to them. They introduced us to their boss. We talked to them. And ultimately, we ended up working with them to understand kind of the claims insurance industry, kind of how big the problem was. Ended up building a prototype, going to an insurance conference and showing kind of the prototype that we had built, and people got really excited. They got really excited by what we were showing them. They were like, "Hey, we use this right now?" And that's when we were like, "Okay, maybe there's something here. We should dive further in." And here we are, a couple of years later.
It is a fascinating story because sometimes the smallest, I would say smallest problem because they are very claim centered, but actually a complex problem for those who are actually working in the job every single day. And so it's fascinating to hear that you actually find a niche, a problem that a lot of adjusters, claims managers were experiencing and was able to actually find a way to solve that problem. So let's go into a little bit of a scenario here. So let's think about, maybe David, right? A claim adjuster. And that person, on average, right, has a lot of claims that it has to handle every day. And it is, I guess, Friday. We love Fridays. I know it's not Friday right now, but Friday 4:59. And he has to actually start dealing with claims denial. So what would you expect to find inside, and how would Voltaire start rewriting a story when you start looking at this claim adjuster, David, who has to actually deal with all those clients being upset at 5 o'clock on Friday with all those letters that was not expected to come back on his desk?
I think that you paint a pretty realistic scenario here. I think what you would find is kind of the usual rushed claims letter. If adjusters, they don't enjoy writing these, especially denials. So David, in this situation, like they hurry, they procrastinate, they copy and paste from whatever letter is most similar, and they lean heavily on templates, on cheat sheets to figure out like which clauses to cite in this denial letter. And no one reads these policies in detail. So small mistakes and often big ones, they slip through. So Voltaire, we flip that. It generates each letter from scratch. So it doesn't take shortcuts, and it removes that room for error. The adjuster spends, far less time on the thing that they hate and more time on the claim itself.
So when we think about the ARS, right, and we often think about our industry now trying to embed artificial intelligence in everything they do, but at the same time, we need to actually think about claims, human errors, and litigation. You won't believe I was having a conversation just yesterday around claims litigation and social inflation, which is currently happening in the United States. And I have to say that, some small insurers have to look at different options for themselves when they start looking at these nuclear claims settlement requests because of all the changes happening in the US. So when we start looking at insurance, maybe health insurance, and I know when we chatted, you shared a little bit of example with me. How do we start, really understand the customer and how customer is fighting back for better service and potentially better technology as well? Can you share with us some parallels of your experience at Voltaire when you look at what is happening currently in claims today?
Sure. I think, yeah, like what we've seen in health insurance is kind of this AI arms race where the companies like Even Up and Counterforce Health, they are, and these are becoming pretty large platforms. They're allowing these individuals or law firms to, create healthcare appeals really easily. And we're now starting to see that in, like homeowners insurance and other areas where the more resourceful plaintiff attorneys have already figured out how to use AI to scale the rate and the depth at which they can review carrier correspondence for errors, inconsistencies, and policy misquotes, anything that they, can snag to create a, legitimate counterclaim, right? And it's starting to catch steam, and I think it will just become increasingly widespread as knowledge of the existence of these tools proliferates. I think what it really means now is that every claim letter is becoming like a defensibility test from day one, right? Like we're seeing these AI generated demand packages that arrive courtroom ready with polished arguments and cross-reference evidence that forces carriers to respond at a similar level of precision. And I think it's going to become increasingly difficult for them to do so without also scaling up their AI tools if the on the plaintiff side or on the individual side they're using AI to create these professional packages. I think defense attorneys are getting an uptick in volume that requires intervention, and we'll just continue to expect to see that growing. The plaintiff AI tools can just produce hundreds of sophisticated documents at scale, turning like these minor slip-ups in claims letters into potent lawsuit exhibits.
Fascinating, right? How AI can be used within our industry, but also actually is being used by the defendant, right? To actually create cases which are very detailed around things which have happened in the past to justify why things should happen toward their case. So from a technological viewpoint, because you are a technologist at heart, right? Why do copy paste, right? Errors and templates fatigue still plague our industry in 2025. You won't believe it. I'm working with one of the big tech company right now around the trust dilemma. And one key things which came out of their study is that we are all using artificial intelligence, and a lot of insurers are starting using generative AI, but do not do that with the right governance, the right processes, the right, human in the loop. So how do we actually start leveraging Voltaire or the techniques you are actually embedding within the claims office to ensure that we just avoid the errors and actually use the right templates in 2025, 2026?
Yeah, I mean, before I started this company, I did not think that this would have been a problem in kind of this day and age. And I think the biggest reason why it even is a problem is because of the immense amount of dynamic complexity in these policies and in claims. An insurance carrier, they may offer a number of different base policies, and then there may be state-specific special provisions that modify that base policy, and then there are endorsements or unique amendments on top of that. So the number of combinations of a unique policy is immense. It could be in the quadrillions, right? And so there are all these different, and then there's all the different possible things that can happen in the claim itself, like what the person's claiming or like the thing that happened. So I think like all these legacy tools that exist, they tried to increase efficiency through these template-based systems by covering like the most common cases. But what that results in is like endless template configuration, keeping them updated, because real rules in jurisdictions are continuously changing. And then there's these rigid rule sets that don't cover the edge cases, cumbersome formatting that adjusters often find slower than just doing it manually. So I think what happens is adjusters face an impossible choice. Like they either use the official system that they're supposed to be doing, or they misquote a go home late, or so they copy paste from old letters to meet their targets, and then they leave on time. So whenever you have like productivity measured, people are going to choose speed over compliance. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that most adjusters, they never actually learn like the complete like correct way to write a claims letter. They just kind of have the standard that's taught internally to meet whatever the minimum thresholds are within their kind of organization. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's answer the question, but at the same time, I think, let's go into understanding the size of the pie, right? When you actually build Voltaire, I'm sure when you met the investors, you had to do the time sum sum, right? You had to identify the size of the problem. So can you share, right, what the financial stakes are? Because I think our listeners would really want to understand so how big that is. And what does a poorly written claim letter really cost? Because we talked about social inflation, we talked about big litigation. This morning, as I said, I was on a few calls. I heard about, $25,000 claims becoming, 20 to 30 million claims. So tell us, what is really the size of the pie from a litigation, leakage, LEA viewpoint? Yo.
Sure. Yeah, actually, I have some numbers. Litigation alone adds an average of $10,718 per claim in loss adjustment expense. And so we project that Voltaire can reduce litigated claims by 10% or more through more defensible correspondence. Claims leakage from communication error, it represents like somewhere between like 1 to 3% of total claims costs, but that's over $6.4 million annually for like a mid-sized carrier. So even a conservative 5% improvement in leakage from clearer letters, that translates to $320,000 in recovered value. And the hidden costs, they cascade across like many categories. There's inflated labor costs from the manual rework. There's regulatory fines if things are late or other problems. Customer churn, adjuster burnout and turnover. The replacement costs on replacing an adjuster are often 100 to 200% of that person's salary. And then there's the domino effect where one letter error triggers claim reopening, payment delays, and then escalated reviews.
And that is actually considerable when you think about it, right? Because you have the cost you mentioned, but also you have those massive hidden costs, which probably goes into the million. You mentioned the regulator. So I would like to hear from you, how do you interact with the regulator and how are regulators paying closer attention to how AI is using claims? And we heard, in the past, some issues around claims denial. So I would love to go into that with you. But when we think about Voltaire, how do you ensure explainability, transparency, compliance when you actually use artificial intelligence within your AI? And then correspondence you're producing for your clients?
Yeah, that's a big question, and a lot of I think like something like 27 states, like we're keeping track of, have proposed some kind of AI type of law or requirements or regulations. So Voltaire, we include critical guardrails. So for one, like if an adjuster requests a denial letter, but there's no valid policy exclusion that exists to support the denial, the system returns no relevant policy language was found. So this prevents a wrongful denial or, kind of like prevents a compliance violation before it happens. Additionally, we provide an audit trail showing which policy sections, endorsements, or regulatory rules informed each part of the letter that's generated. So it makes it very straightforward to a supervisor or a regulator to understand the AI's reasoning. The AI also explicitly provides a paragraph narrative explaining its reasoning. So we've been told by claims managers and adjusters that the AI has been teaching them things about policies that they've never known before. So I think the big difference is that our approach treats compliance as a product feature, not like an afterthought. Every letter cites exact policy language, where it's needed, and we can explain how amendments or exclusions modify the base coverage. So that ensures the transparency and reduces E&O exposure.
So one thing which comes to mind is for me, when I think about Voltaire, right, it's about how we start embedding better approaches within claims team, right? How do we train people better? We talk about digital transformation, but what is transformation today? It's about people transformation and culture transformation, I think, And so how do we start also adjusting the fact that our industry is transforming, is changing, just last week, a number that came during one of the conversations I was having through a webinar is 40% of our more mature experts within the insurance companies are going to retire. So we need to find the right talent. So when you actually start looking at stories, right, within the carriers where you are working with, what is the best approach, do you think, today to train adjusters and help them become better at their job? When you start looking at how we can support the younger people, maybe by learning from the older ones, what would be your approach?
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, I've heard the same thing from carriers that a lot of their more senior adjusters are retiring, and they're having difficulties with replacing them with kind of younger or new talent. So what we've seen as much as 50% of new adjusters being hired with zero prior insurance experience. So by combining simulation-based training with Voltaire access, so for one carrier, they use Voltaire to help trainees work through dozens of complete simulated claim life cycles before they ever touch a live claim. And the managers, they gain that visibility into the adjuster's capability before day one on production. So as one chief claims officer, they told us, I can see work product from new hires before approving them for live claims. It's amazing. We have people that are new to us that can now write letters that pass QA on day one. So I think that if the program eliminates weeks of policy language familiarization, which is probably the part that takes the longest for a new adjuster to get up to speed on, like that becoming familiar, well acquainted with the carrier's specific policies, and even more so if they haven't touched insurance ever before. Those new hires now arrive floor ready, right? Like they can have confidence in their first customer interaction because Voltaire is going to automatically cite the correct, accurate policy language, regardless of complexity. In fact, the more complex or nuanced the scenario, the better it is to have AI writing that letter.
Which is important, right? And so now I want to go into much more complex claims because, as you know, we are living in the world where actually catastrophic losses are something which happen most months. Let's say most months rather than every day, because that sounds very, really bad if we actually say that it happen every day. But they happen on a regular basis. I was in during the summer. I was in Italy, and I was reading about France, flash floods, and then it happened in New York. So those type of things are current, and they happen all the time. But what I learned when we catch up, actually, a few weeks ago, is actually carriers are very much dependent on independent adjusters. So when you think about the independent adjusters, right, often coming from cold and familiar point when they actually start interacting with a higher policy language. How do you and your team at Voltaire change the day one situation, productivity story for those adjusters?
This is where Voltaire really got its start, actually, handling a large amount of catastrophe claims for our customers that were operating in the Southeast after hurricanes. So yeah, temporary adjusters, they create this concentrated E&O risk at the exact moment of the greatest exposure for the carriers during these catastrophes. They're often, either they're newer adjusters or they're unfamiliar with the carrier's policies. And it's difficult for managers to review every single letter with their tight time constraints. And we've been told by managers too that like 100% of the initial letters that the adjusters write are rejected for one reason or another in those first like couple weeks while those adjusters are getting used to the policies for that carrier. We were able to onboard all of the IA firms for our customers during the catastrophe surges last year and eliminate that day one learning curve. So the CAT adjusters were able to draft accurate letters citing correct policy language immediately. So they didn't require those weeks of becoming familiar with the carrier-specific forms, endorsements, and coverage nuances. There were times like when they were trying to cite certain things, and our system didn't let them. So this all translates to a massive cost avoidance during peak demand. Like you're paying overtime, bringing in these independent firms at these premium rates, and having those resources productive from hour one rather than day 14 or day 30 directly impacts the LAE and settlement quality during that that critical claim window.
Yeah, so let's actually share what does it mean from a customer or let's say an adjuster satisfaction viewpoint, right? I think some of the number I heard 6 out of 10 to 9 out of 10. This is an incredible jump, right, for any survey. So what is the hidden moral boost when actually artificial intelligence is used in the right way within a crisis situation, like we talked about, not cat. And so tell us, what is a 9 out of 10 means for Voltaire?
Sure, we did find this quite interesting. So the numbers are adjuster satisfaction in our survey jumped from a 6.5 to a 9.25, which is a 42% increase. And when we dug into the why, it was because we removed I guess what we call like the copy paste crisis, which is the daily grind of hunting through old files, finding one to copy from, the reformatting templates, or just worrying that every word that they're writing might become Exhibit A in litigation, right? So I think adjusters, well, they described feeling liberated to focus on like what they were trained for, right? Like investigating losses, evaluating risk, and serving the policyholders. So instead of like wordsmithing compliance documents, all right. So one senior adjuster, they said, I save about 2 hours daily. I'd say we can all do at least one more claim per day now. So I think just the fact that like most adjusters hate writing letters, and we're just reducing the amount of time that they spend doing that in their job, which accounted for quite a chunk of their day to day. So the ripple effect on retention is significant. We've seen numbers that replacing an adjuster costs 100 to 200% of their salary in recruitment, onboarding, and lost institutional knowledge. So improving their daily work experience directly protects against that, or that protects that investment, I guess, into hiring and training those adjusters.
Absolutely. I mean, you said 200%. It's not a small amount, knowing that our industry is suffering with those 40% of talent going out of the industry and having to identify the right talent to enter the sector as well and make sure that they enjoy what they are doing. So it's a good use of artificial intelligence we are hearing here. So I know that you are building integration with some great, top tier companies out there. I don't know whether you can share any more with us, but I would like people to hear the great solution and the great capabilities which are coming to market when they think Voltaire. And I would love for you to also share how critical it is, or is it, that Voltaire lives inside the system of adjusters, already ready to be used when the adjuster is ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can get a carrier up and running almost immediately with our standalone tool. And the metric that matters the most, though, at the end of the day, is adoption. So we currently have an 85% plus adoption rate among adjusters with our customers now. And by connecting directly to claim systems like Guidewire, adjusters don't need to context switch, re-enter data, or learn a separate interface. It requires little effort, which means that they actually use it. And so we have a Guidewire integration that will be published later this year. So that low effort is, I think, the difference between 85% adoption and the 88% failure sorry, there was an MIT report that came out a little recently that showed that there's an 88% failure rate of AI initiatives due to poor adoption. And I think that when a tool feels like extra work, even if it's like better, adjusters will still bypass it under deadline pressure or just inconvenience. So it has to be easier than like what they're currently doing. And we don't want to ask carriers to like rip and replace their tech stack. So whether it's integrated or used standalone, like our promise to the carriers is to deliver this next gen claims quality without that kind of painful potentially multi-year transformation project that would typically kill momentum in ROI. We do it really quickly. We either you can use our standalone tool or you can integrate into whatever you currently use.
Fascinating, because a lot of the conversation I'm having right now is about legacy modernization, and the conclusion actually in October, we are talking in October, right, of this year, 2025. The main statement I receive is no rip and replace. But the other statement I hear is about orchestration and leveraging the right technology, which are AI enabled, to actually pull information from wherever it needs to be used to actually enable the user, whether it's finance, claims, underwriting, to do their job better, but having a full 360 view of the organization. So, I need to ask you about the future and how we drive competitive advantage, right? Because we can't do it alone. Carriers need partners like yourself to actually get the job done and actually find new sources of revenue in new markets, whether locally or internationally. So you have been building metrics, right? Metrics around ROI to actually justify your case. And you've shared so many numbers with us, which is often what a lot of carriers are asking for, the proof points, right? And when I think about your numbers, I think about potential opportunities going into the years to come, but delivering 200, 300, 400% value returns for our insurance carriers. So let's think about the claims executive. And I call him David Chan, right? He's responsible for operation in ABC insurance company or insurance mutual in the United States. So if David had to justify why he should invest in Voltaire to his CFO, because now they check everything, right? What is a killer number he should quote to actually justify his investment?
Say to the CFO, I would tell him 378% first year ROI. So, and I'll break that down. A carrier processing approximately 10,000 property claims, they would save about $670,000 annually. That's a net gain of over $500,000 after covering all the costs associated with Voltaire's implementation costs. And we have a 35 metric ROI case that we can share with any carrier to kind of show them the specific numbers as it pertains to them. But the adjuster, if we break it down to like on a per letter basis, the adjuster spends 30 minutes to, let's say, 2 hours working on a claim, or maybe even just like one specific letter. And then there's senior personnel, attorney review time, and those manual processes, they consume time, cost, and we charge $15 per claim. So as many letters as the carrier needs over the life of that claim, it's covered in that $15. So the math very quickly becomes undeniable. Like it's unequivocally beneficial for the carrier in time, compliance, happiness, and of course, cost. And this is all actually before counting the avoided litigation and recovered leakage. If you factor in even like a modest 5% improvement on that front in claims leakage, the ROI doubles to, over 500%. It makes it like one of the fastest payback investments in claims operations that, a CFO could have available.
Yeah. I have to pause for a moment. I mean, those numbers are important numbers because every organization is going for transformation, a lot of efficiency, innovation happening right now, even though we need to start looking at the top line and seeing how we're actually earning new customer trust rather than just new customer segment. So you already mentioned the magic number, which I've been talking about the whole month of September and October, actually, which is this 95% of AI pilot fail. But I found another piece of study, which was, I believe, a McKinsey study, which was around 88%. And there's a new BCG study, which is around 83%. Anyway, it's above 75%, right? So AI adoption fails in general. But what makes the adoption of what you have to offer different?
So one thing I'd say is that our use case is pretty specific. It's like we're working on making these claims letters better. We're not trying to do like, 10 different things. I'd say that we treat carriers as partners. We have direct feedback loops with them. So adjusters, their input, it goes to us, it goes to their training leaders and managers who will convey it to us. And then we can make changes for their benefit and implement those within days, not months. And so I think that builds trust among like what would otherwise be initially skeptical staff. And we have, bottom up value demonstration which drives like the organic adoption within these organizations. So when like the early adopters, the first adjusters within a carrier that start using it, they start saving 2+ hours daily. Their colleagues are going to see that time savings firsthand, and peer success. Those stories, those become like the most powerful change management tool. I'd say that our approach it's very user-centric by design. Every decision, like it starts with what the adjuster needs and what, like what the organization needs for their, the letters that they're trying to produce. And we didn't mandate adoption. We just made the tool so useful that the adjusters chose to use it because it makes their day better. And it wasn't, that leadership forced adherence. But at the end of the day, like we make everyone in the stack happier. We make the adjuster happier, their manager, because there's, the letters are higher quality. There's fewer things that they need to like edit or kick back. Their supervisors are happier. Their directors are happier. The legal team is happier, and the CFO.
And that is important, right? You are building happiness within the claims team, which we don't often hear about. So that is a very important part, whether, we have a carrier, an investor, if we have actually a claimant as well, that actually some carriers are really aiming to build happy claims team to process the claims super fast. So that is why we start looking at technology that like correspondence to start interacting and communicating with the customer much faster. But we've talked about health, right, earlier. And I think it's very important for the carriers out there to understand which type of lines of business you're after. Right? We talk about health, but you are probably expanding across a number of lines of business. And what challenges do you see can be tackled or things you need to think about?
Yeah, we currently offer our product in home property, and we are expanding to auto and then commercial after that. We're working with several carrier partners now to configure our auto solution with our intent to bring that about general availability in Q1 of next year. So, and we can offer customized demos for auto now for anyone that asks us. The auto claims, it represents the volume play for us, like higher claims counts, faster cycle time requirements, and a regulatory landscape that varies dramatically by state. But fundamentally, the problem that we're tackling, it's the same. The adjusters need defensible, accurate correspondence, They hate writing letters, and our solution architecture scales pretty naturally to each other line of insurance. I think we just need to start with a small number of carriers, make sure that we understand any nuances that exist between the different lines of insurance, and then once we feel comfortable, we can roll it out at a wide scale.
Yeah, no, it's very important to understand the wider scale you may want to touch. I may tease you just a little. I know you're already monitoring 27 states, yo, and the goal would be to expand across the United States. Any way I can convince you to come to London in Europe?
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, we're looking into Canada now, expanding there, and I mean, I think at some point, yeah, we'll try to expand beyond.
And as you know, when you start looking at commercial, I think the Lloyd's market would love to actually find things which serve their customer much better. So looking, 5 years out now, do you see artificial intelligence correspondence becoming standard across the insurance sector? We talk about commercial, auto, right? You're expanding new lines, but we use an example as well in healthcare when we actually try to get people to understand what we are dealing with. Or will do you think what we do in our industry stay as a competitive differentiator if they do correspondence with AI the way you do it? And so the early adopter are going to win and the laggards are going to lose.
The way I see it 5 years out is that AI correspondence will just become table stakes. I don't think it'll even be a differentiator at that point. Like, much like how online claims filings or like mobile apps have evolved from like being innovative to just being like the expected minimum, I think that, like we see plaintiff attorneys that are already at billion+ valuations because they use AI to review, every carrier letter. Carriers just can't afford to stay manual. They'll just be an increasingly mounting financial pressure for them to shift. So even for how slowly things tend to move within the insurance industry, it's pretty difficult to imagine that the vast majority of carriers haven't switched over to AI written correspondence within 5 years. The competitive edge will shift to execution quality, right? Like, so like which carriers deploy AI that truly improves outcomes versus those that like implement like a shallow AI washing that frustrates adjusters or like fails to kind of deliver the full package. And the gap between the leaders and laggards, I think, will widen more dramatically there. But 5 years from now, I expect that like boards and regulators, they'll actually be asking carriers like, why aren't they using AI for correspondence if they haven't yet switched? Like the same way that you'd question like, why aren't you using data analytics for fraud detection? The question won't be like, should we adopt, but like, how fast can we catch up to those who already did?
Those who already did often have, I think, and I'm going to be potentially bold when I say what I say is, it's not just about the technology and the artificial intelligence, as you said. It's about how you differentiate. And differentiation will probably come from creativity, how more maybe human and empathetic you can actually use technology to enable you to do that. And where do you actually have that human in that loop? At the moment of truth. So what is going to be the moment of truth tomorrow for me is fascinating because for me it's a much more human part rather than a technology part. Like when we started using, I guess, calculators to count or the computer to do our work or the iPhone to speak and do many other things. So it will become, as you said, utility, but the differentiator again will be how human can you make it? Potentially. So my next question to you is more around concluding and actually seeing your perspective in how things are going to go long term. So if today, let's say now in 2 months' time, let's say if we at Reuters connected claims, for instance, gathered claims leaders, regulators and adjusters in one single room, like we often do during the conference, what is the one message each of them should know about Voltaire, and you would want to tell them about artificial intelligence and the role it has within the claims management sphere and in enabling writing and producing correspondence?
That's a good question. I suppose the message I'd want to convey would address what I think a lot of people's concern with AI is writing letters. So AI written policy cited correspondence, it already outperforms any previous method of producing letters on speed, accuracy, and compliance. Carriers that use it will see fewer disputes, faster cycle times, and happier adjusters. I think that it's just there's a lot of skepticism or a lot of unknowns around AI, and sometimes it's just difficult for people to believe it. Even like at the conferences we attend and at Connected Claims, we'll show people live demos, and we can do demos with their policies with on their letterhead and show them letters being generated. And even then, still sometimes people have a difficult time believing that it's going to fully work. And I think that's the message that I'd like to try to instill in people, is that this is real and we have it available today.
And that is important. We already have it available today, and we can actually do so much more. But the technology is an enabler. And when we start looking at our industry, so much we can do actually for our customers and make them happier, partly in times where the reputation of the industry is not the greatest, but actually customers need insurance. So they are looking for those carriers who actually care about customer experience, customer engagement, and actually solving the problem, the claims, the fastest as possible. So I look forward to seeing you at Connected Claims Reuters this year, Yo. And I would love for everybody to know, if they want to see you, meet you, talk to you about this, what should they do?
So we'll have a booth there at Connected Claims. So please come and find us. I'll be spending a good amount of time there. So you can come up to me and ask me all your questions.
And I know for me to find you is Voltaire.Claim. If people want to talk to you, LinkedIn, email, what is your preferred mechanism of communication? Where should they reach out?
Yeah, go to our website. You can book a demo with us there. Come find me at the conference. Email us. Connect to me on LinkedIn. Absolutely.
Well, Yo, thank you so much for joining me on the Scouting for Growth podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scouting for Growth. Please subscribe, share with friends, and leave a 5-star rating. Your rating is so valuable. I review all of them, and my team help me adapt content to meet your needs. Also, connect with me on my preferred channels. I am a B2B growth expert, so you will find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads, and X as well as Blue Sky. All information available below. Until next, keep scouting for growth.